And hello, everybody. Good evening and happy Tuesday to all of you. Well, tonight, we start ourselves a new book The Blacksmith's Boy by Bruce Buchanan. For those of you guys who have been following along, we completed Spear of Destiny Finding Bucephalus on Saturday. If you happen to miss any of that, it's all available on the YouTube channel, youtube.com/@SirArminius, for your rewatching pleasure. And tonight, we start a brand new book. Now, for those of you guys who have been following along with me for a little while, you know I don't read any of these things ahead of time. I do it on purpose, so that way I get to experience the book right along with you, and I'm not jaded or ahead of you or anything else as we go through. So we all get to learn about the Blacksmith's Boy together. I know you are all excited by that. And if you have any questions or anything else, our author is available right now on the YouTube channel. Go and say hello. Hello, Bruce Buchanan. Glad to have you here with us. So, not knowing anything about what this book is about, because that's all the fun, let's go ahead and get ourselves ready to get started tonight. I'm going to do a little bit of preliminary stuff here, and then we'll talk a little bit about what this is going to look like. So to start with, the dedication. To Dad, you shared your lifelong love for books, and so much more. This one's for you. Love, Bruce. There we go. Written for you by Bruce Buchanan. Links are available. They'll be on the recorded videos for you, but his work is available, I know, on Amazon, on his website, on his publisher's website. You know, multiple places for you to go and check out what he's got. Hello, Gabrielle Campos. Glad to have you here with us. So, I record all of the chapters as we go through these, and I do it for a couple of reasons. The first, 8 o'clock Eastern Time is an ideal time for me. It is not an ideal time for everybody, and I want everybody to have the opportunity to experience the work put out by these fantastic indie authors. So, by having the chapters recorded for you, you are able to get back out there, watch it at your convenience, at a time that works for you. In addition, I know my narration style, sometimes I'm too fast for people. Sometimes I'm too slow for people. YouTube has a fantastic ability to allow you to set your playback speed. Do I read too slowly? Speed it up a little bit. Do I read too quickly? Slow it on down. Whatever works for you. It gives you the ability to get back out there, share the videos with your friends who you also think should be listening to it. Listen to it at the speed that you want to listen to it, and enjoy it at your leisure. That said, I'd love to have you guys here with me. I can react a little bit to comments on the videos, but live comments, well, I can do those much better. Now, I say can do those much better. Because I'm recording these, I don't stop in the middle of the chapter to respond to comments. You guys are welcome to chat with each other, with the author, if he's able to make it on the times that we're doing it, things like that. I will be happy to respond to comments in between the chapters. But they don't come across so well on a recording. So I read the chapter through, and then I will be happy to chat with you in between. And now, wherever you happen to be, if you are in a warm place, get yourself a nice cold drink. If you're in a cold place, get yourself a hot drink. Sit back, relax, and prepare to enjoy as we dive into our next indie author novel, The Blacksmith's Boy by Bruce Buchanan. Read for you by Tim Maloney. And here we go. Prologue. The farmer was pleased. He peeled back the dark green husk of the corn, the kernels inside as golden as the sunset cascading over the farm. His family would eat corn stew this winter. Perhaps they could sell a few ears in the village for some much-needed coins. This small patch of corn served his family well. He had no way of knowing it was where his life was about to end. The farmer, his wife, and their 2 children tended their 1-acre farm in the morning and evening. During the day, they helped tend the fields of a noble-class landowner. Like their neighbors, they were members of the serving class, forbidden by law to enter certain trades, hold public offices, or own more than a small amounts of property. That had been the way of life in the kingdom of Imarina for centuries. The farmers, laborers, builders, and artisans did their share of grumbling, but as long as the kingdom was at peace and dinner tables remained full, few felt the need to press for change. "Look, Papa, Raleigh wants to show you off for you." The boy, around 8 summers old, hurled a chewed stick through the twilight sky, sending the tail-wagging collie streaking toward the wooden missile. The dog snatched the stick in full stride before it could touch the ground, then raced back to the child to receive a well-earned pat on the head. "That's a great trick," the farmer said. "Now run along and get washed up for supper before your mother takes a switch after both of us." But instead of turning toward the house, the young boy pointed behind his father and screamed, "Papa, look out!" The farmer spun around and could scarcely believe the horror before him. Row after row of his corn crop instantly disintegrated into black ash, as if an invisible inferno rolled over the fields. The wave rolled across the field, heading straight for the farmer and his son. "Run, boy!" The child hesitated until his father yelled again, "Run!" But the unseen force continued to consume rows of corn like dry kindling fed into a bonfire. Strangely, the rippling death made no noise. The only sounds in the cornfield were those of the farmer's footfalls and his gasps for breath. He glanced over his shoulder. As fast as he moved, it was not swift enough. The farmer, father, and husband screamed as the magical surge overtook him, reducing him to a small pile of black dust in a growing field of the same. The boy, breathless and panicked, slammed open the front door of their small cabin. "Mother, come quick! We've got to run!" "Where's your father? What?" She looked out the cabin's lone window. What she saw terrified and fascinated her at the same time. A dark surge in a dry, black ocean roaring silently toward their home. The woman grabbed her daughter's hand, causing the child to spill her water cup. "Hurry!" she screamed as much at herself as at her children. She almost made it to the front door. The spell crushed the small house into cold cinders. There, in the doorway of their own home, the Yult family died instantly. Had they started moving just 5 seconds earlier, they would have lived. The killing black tide almost instantly dissipated after leveling the house, fading like a water mirage on a blazing summer day. From a nearby hill, 3 people, all clad in black jackets over plain red clothes, dark hoods pulled low over their faces, inspected the scene. The Yult farm, which had been fertile and green just moments earlier, was now completely gone, erased in a perfectly square block. The 3, 2 women and a man, watched from beneath their hoods as the summer breeze sifted the black dust. They were pleased with their work. "The spell worked. The blight is a success," said the shorter of the women. The trio stood around a neatly placed ring of red roses, nightshade sprigs, and charcoal lumps. "You doubted it would, Nerugian," the dark-haired, square-jawed man said. He wore the same black jacket over red clothes as the others, but red braids adorned the shoulders of his neatly pressed jacket.
No, no, that is not what I intended, true leader.
The woman offered a bow of apology for the unintended slight. The other young woman intervened on her behalf.
I believe what she means is that the power of the blight is beyond anything we could imagine.
The true leader nodded.
Yes, Eladrian. These magics have not been seen in more than 300 summers. Even the most skilled sorcerers do not know of their existence. But the blight is real. We proved as much. And this is only the beginning.
But what of the House of Magic? Won't they hear of this?
She replied.
Yes, and King Isbiano? Will he not investigate?
Nuragian asked, apparently having recovered enough of her nerve to speak again. The true leader smiled.
Perhaps. The king will be alarmed when he hears of what we've done. I'm equally certain the sorcerers at the House of Magic will downplay the threat. They will never believe that anyone could threaten their supremacy, even when presented with irrefutable evidence to the contrary. And members of the Royal Council will pursue their own narrow agendas and scheme to win the king's favor. So, yes, I'm sure the crowd will have some sort of response to our actions here today, but it will be insufficient. By the time our weak, ineffective leaders realize the threat before them, we will be standing in the royal palace, and the scions of Sonorian will rule the kingdom for 1,000 summers to come.
Led by the true leader, the sorcerers then walked through the black dust, 3 sets of footprints in what moments before had been a vibrant family farm.
Ooh, we've got magic, ladies and gentlemen. We've got death. We've got mayhem.
Which all brings us to a lot of fun, right?
Ah, yes.
One other thing I should note in here that I failed to say earlier, but is definitely important for you to be aware of. This is a live read, meaning I'm going to mispronounce words. I'm going to accidentally read a sentence out of order every once in a while. And because I don't read these in advance, I'm going to run across names that are gonna trip me up a little bit. All my own failings in here. The book itself is not the failing. That is the failing of your live reader here. It's very different on a live read than it is on a recorded audiobook. A recorded audiobook, I mess it up, I go do it again, and again, and again, and again until I get it right. Thank you. But on a live read, I don't go back. If I mess it up, we just roll right along. So just be aware of that fact to it. I also encourage, if you do find that you are enjoying the book, make sure you stop out there, pick up a digital copy. There are going to be places you can get a digital copy. You can read on your, Kindle, ebook readers. You can pick up a physical copy. Read along with me as I go through. What great ways to support your author, right? 'Cause why not? And then you can laugh at all the places that Tim goes wrong. Or right. I'll put voices in your head. I'm good at doing that because there are a lot of people who have never even read their own books out loud. And so when I read it out loud, suddenly my voice becomes the voice. Isn't it fun? All right, everyone. I don't see any other questions out there at the moment, so let's continue rolling along, shall we? As we dive into Chapter 1. On a similar farm nearly 200 miles away, Bok Omat faced his own adversary and whispered a quiet prayer.
Come on, please work with me, girl.
For 30 minutes he had waved a spoon of metallic-smelling medicinal powder in front of the sick cow's nose, only to be ignored. Ministering to farm animals was an important, if routine, part of Bok's job as healer of Soleil Valley, a small hill-covered farming community in southern Imarina. Bok blew a breath out of the side of his mouth. As a healer, he practiced folk magic, enchantments handed down through generations of healers to heal and nurture animals, crops, and even people. Folk magic worked to improve outcomes that were already possible in the natural world. It wasn't high magic, the type practiced by sorcerers trained in Imarina's House of Magic. Unlike folk magic, high magic harnessed mystical energy for a range of supernatural purposes, including devastating attacks and powerful shields. Only those from the noble class even had the acumen, the natural potential to perform high magic, and only a small number of nobles were born with the acumen, just as only a few in the serving class could employ folk magic. It wasn't sorcery, but folk magic was an honest profession for a peasant. Unless Bok was dealing with an obstinate cow. Now if I could just coax Maka to take this spoon. There, girl. That's it. The cow finally opened her mouth and gulped down the copper powder. Bok then placed his hands on the animal's side and spoke a brief, stomach-settling spell. The cow looked at him with oversized eyes, then turned away to consider whatever debate barn cows normally had inside their heads. Bok exhaled. The job finally done. The young man of 19 summers dusted the excess powder from his hands, naturally dark and further tanned by long hours in the sun. His dark brown hair hung to the collar of his homespun white cotton shirt, which cost him a box of nails made in his family's blacksmith's shop. Just a sour stomach, Father Cole. She should be fine now, but I'll stop back by next week. Bok rubbed his close-cropped beard as he spoke. Thank ye, Bok. I sure appreciate your coming by so quick. The elderly farmer walked with Bok out of the small, unpainted barn. She patted Bok's thick forearm. Without Maka, I don't have milk to make corn stew, and you know how much I love that old girl. But I'm kindly short on coins. Bok smiled. You still keep bees, right? I'll gladly accept a jar of your wildflower honey and call it even. He had only been on the job for 6 months when Weni Khan, his mentor and Soul Valley's healer for 27 summers, retired to her farm. But so far, it was going well. Bok was proud he could help his neighbors. He arrived home to his family's 3-room pine plank house, the smell of hot bread pulling him in from the road. Although such hearty foods were the reason he wanted to lose a few pounds around the middle, he could not imagine a more delicious aroma. Figured you'd show up right as I'm serving lunch, Bok. His mother, Bok Omat, placed plain clay plates at the table in the home's main room, which housed its kitchen and dining area. At night, Bok rolled out a thin straw-filled mat and slept on the floor. Bok kissed his mother on the cheek. Widow Kara has a pretty bad case of the gout, and then I had to go by the coal place and tend to Maka. You do this family and Soul Valley proud, son. A voice boomed from behind him. His father, Finn Omat, stepped into the small house, wiping his sweaty face with a handkerchief. How an ironbender like me ended up with both a healer and the best blacksmith in Imarina, not to mention your amazingly talented mother, remains a mystery. A broad-shouldered young woman entered the house behind their father. Like Bok, Yata Omat had shoulder-length brown hair, tan skin, and powerful arms, built by countless hours of hard work. But she stood several inches taller than her younger brother. Well, the finest blacksmith in Sola Valley could use some help this afternoon. What little help my brother can provide. Yata punched Bok in the shoulder on her way to the kitchen. He grimaced. Yata's playful jabs still hit like a mule's kick. She tilted her head at Bok. We've got to shoe Braun Akol's horses. Then we need to make around 100 more nails.
The Drum family is building a new barn. Oh, and Joppa wants her kitchen knives sharpened. In other words, a light day. Finn gulped down a flagon of well water.
I'll help, Father. Bok sighed. So much for my plans to read this afternoon. Behind them, Tana deftly pulled an iron skillet off the pot-bellied wood-burning stove, flipping the steaming griddle bread onto a plain clay plate and handing it to Bok in one smooth, well-rehearsed motion. At that point, Noji, Yatta's son, came barreling out of the back room he shared with his mother and grabbed a hunk of griddle bread that Tana had already slathered with strawberry jam. You are a messy creature, aren't you? I guess you take after me. Bok playfully mussed the dark-headed little boy's hair with his left hand. Noji smiled a strawberry-red smile. Noji's father had run away 4 years earlier when Yatta became pregnant. He said he was too young to deal with the responsibility of being a parent. But my sister is doing a remarkable job of it, even if she can be as annoying as a nest of fire ants. You do not take after your uncle, Noji. Yatta scooped stewed vegetables and scrambled eggs onto her son's plate. Did you know Bok lived in the pig pen until he was 7 summers? Bok shook his head in mock embarrassment as Noji laughed. Once the meal was done, Yatta stood to leave the table. Come, brother, those horses aren't going to shoe themselves. Bok scarfed down his last bite of bread. He faced a long afternoon, and the summer sun wouldn't make it any shorter. The work was exhausting, and by mid-morning, sweat soaked Bok's shirt. He wiped his reddened, dripping face with a handcloth and dipped a ladle of cool well water from an oak bucket. Meanwhile, his sister and father kept pounding out the iron nails, the anvil ringing each time their hammers struck a blow. Bok admired their stamina and wondered how his father had kept such a pace for nearly 30 summers. Bok's father cleared his throat, a sure sign he was about to say something he didn't want to share. Bok, I appreciate your effort, but the nails need to be more like these. He held out his leathery palm with Bok's crooked nail side by side with a perfectly straight version hammered by Yatta. Do you think you could? No problem, Father. I'll bring in a load of wood for the furnace, too. As a blacksmith, Bok knew he made a fine country healer. As Bok donned his gloves to resume his work, a horseback rider came down the dirt trail through the center of the small village, the stallion's hooves kicking up clouds of dust in its wake. The woman's store-bought clothes were far nicer than any in the village, as was her horse. Such a rider undoubtedly came from Ithenel, Imarina's capital city. Bok wondered why the rider would be coming through their small, out-of-the-way community. You Bok Omat? That I am, ma'am. Bok removed his gloves and stepped out through the open doorway into the small yard separating the workshop from the dirt road. How can I help you? The woman handed Bok a neatly rolled scroll, tied with a violet silk ribbon. Her Majesty, Princess Isabella, requests your presence for an advisory meeting at the royal palace 4 days hence. The writer repeated the summons wording, in the incorrect assumption that a peasant like Bok couldn't read. Finn dropped his hammer and came outside. But why? We mind our business and obey the king's laws. What could Her Majesty want with my boy? The messenger shrugged. Those answers will be forthcoming at the royal council meeting. All I can tell you is Princess Isabella signed this command in her own hand. Bok examined the scroll. It certainly seemed official, right down to the calligraphic script of Princess Isabella's signature. Besides, King Isbiano isn't in the habit of jailing innocent people, and folks say the king's only child shares that sense of justice. I hope they're right. The messenger left as quickly as she had arrived, leaving Bok, Yatta, and Finn to stare at the neatly printed scroll. Princess Isabella? Say, She's supposed to have a real soft heart for the serving class. Maybe she's looking for a Sola Valley fella. Someone like a blacksmith's boy. Yada cackled. They say she's as beautiful as she is rich. This could be your chance to marry up, brother. Finn shot his daughter a scowl.
This is serious, Yata. What would the princess and the royal council possibly want with your brother? Perhaps that messenger was some type of bandit.
Bok rubbed his finger over the wax seal embossed on the scroll. I don't know, Father, but this summons looks authentic to me. If someone wanted to rob a poor country healer, surely there are better ways to do it. Finn furrowed his brow.
Son, I don't want you to ride into trouble.
I don't believe I am, Father. If Princess Isabella meant me harm, she would have simply had me arrested, not asked me to show up at the royal palace. The royal family aren't who I'm worried about. Tana shaded her eyes against the bright morning sun with her hand. She shuffled her feet in the crunchy, dry grass. But you'll be among the noble class, Bok. I don't want my son treated like a stray dog instead of a person. Bok looked at the top of his scuffed brown boots. His mother was right. Imarina's strict class divisions meant people like him suffered insults and indignities from small-minded people of higher standing. But what can I do? The only way to win a dispute with the noble class is to avoid one. Surely this must be a mistake. A country healer, a member of the serving class, for goodness sakes, couldn't have much to say that would hold the attention of the kingdom's most important nobles. But not responding to a royal summons would only bring trouble. I don't want that either, but we don't know the reason for this summons. He set his jaw and looked up at his parents. There's only one way to find out. I must go to Ithenel. The royal palace was nearly 3 days' journey, so he hurriedly packed to ensure that he met Princess Isabella's deadline. With Yata's help, he saddled Becky, the horse he took on his rounds as a community healer. Tana shoved a stack of griddle cakes, wrapped with a clean cloth, into Bok's hand. Then she hugged her son. Be careful. You know how dangerous the city can be.
You listen to your mother, Bok. Ithenel is no place to let your guard down.
Finn pulled his son in for a hug of his own. Yata waved, as if to swat away their concerns. Pshaw! You two hens worry too much. Get me a little present in the city, brother. And I can't wear anything ugly if I'm to be the sister of a royal adviser, or the consort to the crown princess.
You could be King Bok.
Noji's joke got a laugh from his uncle and mother. I'll get you something nice, Yata. You too, little man. But don't make your plans for the emissary's ball just yet. Bok climbed onto Becky's saddle. For all I know, this is just a misunderstanding, and I'll be home before week's end. With that, he kissed Noji on the top of the head, waved goodbye to his family, and set out for Ithenel and the royal palace, still unsure of exactly why he was going or what exactly he would do once he arrived. He certainly had no idea that answers to those questions would alter his life's path, and that of Sola Valley, forever. All right, guys. Well, we've made it through a prologue. We've made it through Chapter 1. Any thoughts, comments, questions, concerns? Anything you would like to add? Questions you would like answers to? Things that you would like me to say? Things you would like me to do? I mean, I can dance if you want to. I can leave my friends behind. Because my friends don't dance. And if they don't dance, well, they're no friends of mine. You know, I feel like that's a song I've heard before. S, 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 A, 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 F, 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 E, E, E. Okay, that's enough safety dance. All right, no comments, questions, and concerns means we continue along. Let me make sure. Sorry, I just had to click through all of the different streams to make sure I didn't miss anything anywhere. And I did not. And so now, here we go. Chapter 2. After a third day of hard riding, the dense forests thinned out, and Bok found himself again among familiar-looking farm communities, even if he had never been this far north before. Miles upon miles of fields, dotted by the small homes of the field hands and the occasional manor houses of the noble-class property owner. By late afternoon, Bok entered the sprawling city of Ithenel. The city seemingly sprang up out of the hills that guarded it. Millennia earlier, Ithenel's first settlers had built in the large flat clearing between the cluster of hills, as the location's geography made it the perfect spot to fend off attackers. The layout of the landscape also made Ithenel seemingly appear out of nowhere. Bok and Becky rode up a steeply sloping wide dirt road and went around a bend. When they cleared the rocky hill, the city's skyline filled Bok's entire field of vision. Hundreds of buildings, from one-room shacks to multi-story towers, composed a man-made panorama too big for Bok to take in at once. Bok gasped at the sight, then blushed at his involuntary response. Surely everyone here will think I am a corn-pone commoner. During his training, Weni Khan shared stories of Ithenel. Most of them centered on the city's sheer scope, the crowds in the great bazaar that surged and ebbed around the vendors' tables like a single living thing, the towers that stretched taller than even the red-tailed hawk dared fly, the sounds that hundreds of people generated while working, shopping, and talking on a single city block. If anything, Ithenel was even more expansive than Bok imagined. Bok felt grateful to finally have seen the great city, and more than a bit nervous to travel into the gullet of this beast. The royal palace loomed in the center of the metropolis, the light gleaming off its polished white marble spires like a second sun. Even from this distance, the palace stood out and above the rest of the city. It was built more than 600 years ago on Ithenel's tallest point, for reasons both strategic and symbolic. An artist's drawing of the royal palace hung in the single-room schoolhouse in Sola Valley where Bok and Yatta received their formal education. Bok stared at the picture on many chilly winter mornings. He wondered what it would be like to live in such opulence. How fortunate the royal family must be. If I was that rich, I'd never have a care in the world. His parents would never have to cook again. Bok would hire someone to handle all that, as well as any farming his mother wanted done. Father and Yatta could sell the blacksmith shop and never have to lift a hammer again. And Noji would have every wooden doll he wanted, even the rare expensive ones Bok's family only heard about from traveling merchants. As for himself, Bok would read all the books his imaginary wealth could purchase. As it was, he spent what few extra coppers he had on buying books from the traveling merchant wagons. But he sighed as he shook the leather coin purse strapped to his belt. He had 5 coppers from performing healing duties in the village, and his parents were able to give him another 7 for the journey, every coin they had in the house. However, Bok had never been outside of Sola Valley, and he wanted to bring his loved ones something memorable to mark the occasion. As luck would have it, his first encounter with the city was one place in Imarina where virtually anything could be had, for the right price. The great bazaar stood at the entrance to Ithenel, and the main road into town ran through the middle of the marketplace, intentionally placed to ensure visitors had every opportunity to leave as many coins as possible in the capital city. Dozens of white canvas tents and makeshift wooden shacks formed a labyrinth where buyers could purchase supplies, tools, livestock, and who knows what else. And the sales approach was aggressive, to say the least. "Sir, would you like to buy a hammock?" a vendor asked, approaching Bok. "They're good for your back." Behind him, a stout woman with a handkerchief around her head bellowed, "Fresh-baked pastries right here! 2 for a copper!" Like a crow attracted to spilled corn, an old man crouching on a stool got in on the act. Beckoning Bok, he opened a battered black leather case.
"We've got the finest jewelry right here. Surely you've got a pretty girl back home. She would love to have one of these blue topaz rings, don't you think?"
Bok smiled and waved as politely as he could in hustling past the hawking vendors. Bok pulled his arms tight into his ribs as he rode through the hornet's nest of activity. In Sola Valley, you either bought what you needed at the village's lone general store, or you waited for the monthly supply wagon to come from Ithenel. "Excuse me, sir. I'm sorry to bother you, but I need your help." Bok stopped Becky and looked down to see a young boy, no more than 8 years old, standing at his side. The child's clothes were torn and dirty. He refused to meet Bok's eyes as he kicked at the dirt beneath his bare feet. "What's wrong, little man? There's no need to cry," Bok said, dismounting from his horse. The ragamuffin boy sniffed.
But I lost my mother. She was over there at the spice vendor's tent, and I was looking at those pet snakes. When I went back, she was gone."
"Don't worry, we'll find her. You just stay close to—" Becky whinnied, and Bok wheeled around to see a young girl running away with Bok's knapsack.
"Hey! Somebody stop here!"
But no one in the crowd attempted to stop the young thief. In fact, a few passers-by laughed at Bok's plight. Bok considered chasing the girl, but she undoubtedly knew the bazaar far better than he did, and could lose him in the dense maze of tents. Besides, he had to think about the young boy who lost his mother. Sorry about that. Now let's—" The boy was gone too. That's when Bok's stomach sank. The two children were working together, and the mother, if she even existed at all, likely was waiting for them to return with their stolen loot. He took little comfort in knowing that all the children took was some spare clothing and a few snacks. Stupid! I am just a country bumpkin. 5 minutes in Ithenel, and already I have been robbed and mocked. Why did I leave Sola Valley? Chapter 2 complete. And now, we move right along to Chapter 3. After another 2 hours or so of slow riding through narrow, crowded city streets, Bok entered the sparkling center of Ithenel. There, at the heart of the metropolis, was the royal palace. Bok first realized he must be close to the palace when the streets shifted from cobblestone to red brick, which gleamed from a fresh scrubbing. Glittering mansions, set far back from the road, lined both sides of the oak-shaded street. The brick road dead-ended at a 15-foot-high security wall made of granite blocks and reinforced by iron bars. Bok gripped Princess Isabella's scroll in a shaking hand and took a deep breath. I doubt a peasant from the rural fringes of the kingdom is welcomed at the front door, no matter what official scroll I've got. So he went around back to the service entrance. Peering through the cast-iron gate, he saw a small section of the sprawling royal gardens. The perfectly manicured shrubbery formed a pathway through rose bushes and a kaleidoscope of bright colors snaking up tall trellises. Neatly hedged boxes of zinnias, irises, and hydrangeas grew to the sides of the shrub-lined pathway. Bok could see as many butterflies and birds as flowers, too. He could putter in those gardens for days, putting his knowledge of folk magic to use. But he came here for a different type of business. Bok approached the gate and straightened his loose-fitting shirt, then handed his official summons to the 2 royal guardians standing watch. The woman and man served in the royal guard, Imarina's small military force that guarded the palace as well as the royal family when they ventured out of the castle. They were distinguished by their dark blue, red-trimmed coats and hats. The male guardian shook his head and handed the summons back to Bok.
No, this won't work. Turn around and go back.
But the summons says I am to be here today, and it is signed by none other than the princess herself.
Just as I feared. Because I am the serving class, they assume I'm lying. The second guard rolled her eyes. Sure she did. You are, what, the new candidate for emissary of commerce?
What exactly is your business with the princess?
The first guard took an aggressive step toward Bok. I don't know. Bok's heart rate raced. His pulse throbbed in his neck. I received the summons, but I have no idea what this is all about.
Come with me to Commander Corrigan's office while we sort all this out. We can't have a strange man out here looking for Her Majesty.
Both guards grabbed Bok's arms. The energy drained out of his body. He dared not resist two armed officers of the royal palace if he had any hopes of seeing his family again. But I didn't do anything wrong. I just reported here, as I was commanded to do. Bok's breathing sped up. They aren't listening. To them, I'm a peasant, not a person. In Imarina, one's parentage determined social status for life. It didn't matter how much the Omat family's neighbors respected them. They would always be serving class. The guards jerked Bok away from the gate, but before they could take 2 steps into the palace proper, a voice behind Bok froze him in place.
He's telling the truth, Corporal.
Lord Imarina! The royal guards bowed, then snapped to attention. Bok turned to face a tall, brightly smiling man his own age. Lord Imarina was slender to the point of skinny and a head taller than Bok. A longbow and a quiver of arrows hung casually over the man's shoulder, and his curly black hair drooped low past his shoulders. Bok recognized the name. The Imarina Mercantile Company was Imarina's largest trading company. Their ships and caravans traveled all over the known world, sending goods abroad and bringing treasures back home. Bok had heard it said that, save for the royal family, the Imarina clan was the wealthiest family in the nation. Even if Bok hadn't known the man by reputation, the young man's bright blue silk shirt and eel-skin boots marked him as a man of the noble class. Ithenel waved off the guardian and continued to smile. No worries. We appreciate your diligence, but the princess did summon this man, and for good reason. He clapped the shorter Bok on the shoulder. I bet you could use a square meal and a cold pint in your journey. That was the best offer Bok had heard since he arrived in the city. Having finished the last of his mother's griddle bread at breakfast, he feared he would have to spend a few of his precious coppers on a meal. Bok couldn't meet the noble's eyes, but returned his smile. That sounds wonderful, sir. But first I must tend to my horse. Is there somewhere nearby I can stable her? Ithenel waved over one of the numerous palace attendants roaming the grounds inside the palace gates. You, young lady, I would appreciate you taking my friend's horse to the visitor's stables. She's tired from a long trip, so make sure she gets a good brushing and an extra treat along with her dinner. He then pressed something into the palm of the young woman's hand. Oh, I will, sir. And, sir, she looked at Bok, please let us know when you need your horse, and it will be our pleasure to retrieve her for you. Okay, thanks. Sir? Our pleasure to retrieve her? This must be the treatment life affords those born into the noble class. Normally, Bok would have made it clear to the attendant that, like her, he was just a member of the serving class, not a lord like Ithenel. But given how tired he was and how exhausted he knew Becky to be, he thought it best to just remain silent. His horse could use some extra kindness, and so could he. As a woman gently coaxed Becky by the reins down a long, brick-paved path, she flipped the object Ithenel had palmed her into the air. A silver! Ithenel's tip is more money than we could scrape together for this once-in-his-life journey. A blush rose to Bok's face, and he bowed his head. Thank you, Lord Ithenel. I don't know how you know of me or my intentions here, but I appreciate your help. First of all, it's just Ithenel. I grew bored with formalities long ago, as my exasperated parents will tell you. I heard you were coming because I'm going to be in the same briefing tomorrow. Goodness knows I have plenty of free time on my hands, so I thought I'd come greet you in person. Ithenel lifted a lone finger in the air and grinned. Oh, and because I promised my girlfriend I'd get you settled. What Princess Isabella wants, she gets. Bok's jaw fell open. I see. His girlfriend is Princess Isabella herself? Bok searched his brain for the right way to respond and came up with nothing. Thankfully, Aventil filled in the awkward gap. Have you spent much time in our grand city of Ithenel? Well, actually, this is my first visit. Bok looked down at his scuffed work boots. At any moment he will realize I am a simpleton from Sola Valley and concoct a polite yet convenient excuse as to why his attention is suddenly needed elsewhere. But Aventil just threw his arms in the air. Well, that's great! It means I get to share all my stories. Everyone else in Ithenel has listened to me tell those tales 1,000 times, and they are sick of them. But now you, Bok Omat, get the pleasure of hearing them for the first time. He put his arm around Bok's shoulder and gestured toward the grand 4-story marble structure in front of them. The royal palace is the official residence of King Isbiano and Princess Isabella, but it also serves as a practical center of the Imarinian government. You'll get to meet the emissaries tomorrow. Every one of them is an insufferable gas bag. Probably why the rest of the country thinks we're all like that in the noble class. But don't let them intimidate you, Bok. They are all bluster and little brain. Aventil stuck his index finger in the air. There is one particular emissary that you need to watch out for. Emissary Lororian leads the House of Magic, and she is as savvy as the rest are foolish. As you probably know, the House of Magic governs the practice of high magic in Imarina. That gives them tremendous power, and Lororian isn't afraid to remind the royal council of it. He cocked his head to the side as Bok listened. Don't get me wrong. She's a loyal subject of the crown, but she's got a way of getting her way, and she's blunt about doing it. As they walked, Aventil continued his impromptu tour of the royal palace's facilities. The palace had numerous entryways beyond the main entrance used for ceremonial affairs. Twin mahogany doors at the top of a grand white marble staircase. Several side doors seemed to constantly open and close to allow a veritable army of attendants, advisors, and nobility to move to and from the palace. It's like an anthill where the ants wear nicely tailored clothing. Aventil took Bok through one of these side doors, then down a hall and through 2 swinging doors into a bustling dining room. Tables of various sizes filled the hardwood floor. 4 large rectangular tables for up to 8 were in the center, with 4 square ones for 4 on each side. Unlike the lone tavern in Sola Valley, the tables were stained and varnished, and patrons sat in matching chairs, not on rough-hewn benches. Most of the tables were in use by women and men wearing tailored clothes of fine materials, the type of clothing members of the noble class wore when conducting official business. Many patrons came with leather satchels stuffed with papers and books. Servants half sprinted through the double doors in the back of the hall to keep their plates and cups full. This isn't the main dining hall, but it's quieter and the servants are friendly, Aventil explained, almost apologetically. 2 dining hall attendants scrambled from their post to seat Aventil and his companion at a side table by the room's large panel window. A woman whom Bok assumed was the dining hall's manager, given the deference shown her by the other staff members, walked over as soon as she spotted Aventil. Lord Imarina, always a pleasure. She clapped her hands, which brought her staff members running to her side. Please, seat our guests anywhere they like. Thank you. Anywhere will be fine. You know I'm not picky. Oh, and we'll have the usual, please. Within moments, a roasted chicken and bowls of steaming vegetables appeared on the table, along with a chilled carafe and 2 pewter flagons engraved with the Inishari family crest, a raven under a capital I. Aventil thanked each of them and, as he had done earlier at the guard post, slipped each of the attendants a silver with an inconspicuous handshake. Drink up, Aventil poured the amber drink into Bok's flagon. "They'll bring out another pitcher if we finish this one." Bok sniffed, then sipped the drink. The sweet aroma and flavor of honey tickled his nose and tongue. "It's mead, my friend, made with honey from the king's apiary. I come to this spot every day, and they know what I like here." Bok understood why the noble class liked this drink so much. He took a deeper swig and savored its sweet taste. Meanwhile, Aventil gnawed ravenously on a chicken leg. "So, you are from Solar Valley. I've been through there a few times. Beautiful country. Do your people farm?" "Yes. No. Well, kind of." Somehow Bok couldn't help stumbling on his words. "I mean, my sister and father are the community blacksmiths. That's what they do. But we live on a small farm that my mother runs. Only as much land as much as we're allowed to own." There it is, the unspoken truth said out loud. I am serving class. Bok exhaled and studied Aventil's face for a reaction. But the young noble appeared more interested in the dinner conversation than in any class differences. "And you're a healer? How did you get into that?" Bok tilted his head back against the padded seat. "It wasn't by a grand design. Winnie Khan, my mentor, served as community healer all throughout my childhood. I did well in school, and when I finished, she came to me and asked if I wanted to apprentice under her. I realized my options were to be a healer, get a job farming someone else's land, or be the third best blacksmith in my own house. So it wasn't a tough choice." Aventil chuckled at that line through a mouthful of bread. Bok continued, feeling relaxed enough to cut a small piece of bread for himself. The aroma made his mouth water. "So far, it's been going well. Folk magic just makes sense to me. Winnie said she knew I had the acumen for folk magic, and that's why she picked me to be her student. I'm glad she did. And I'm glad too, by the Exalted One, because we need your skills." Bok bit the inside of his cheek. "What do you mean?" "Ithenel is the center of high magic in the kingdom, the home of the vaunted House of Magic. Surely those trained sorcerers are better equipped to handle any problem than a country healer with 6 months of experience." Aventil looked around the tavern, then leaned across the table to whisper, "Have you heard of whole fields of crops just withering into dust in seconds?" Bok rested his chin on his hand. "Like a flash fire? Such things do happen in the summer. A dry spell followed by an ill-placed lightning strike, and a whole farm goes up in flames." "Like that, except there wasn't any lightning. It was a clear night." Aventil helped himself to a refill of mead. "Just whoosh. A farm was there, and then it wasn't. The trees, the house, even the family. It's all ash now." Bok froze when he heard this. Oso Creek was a farming community, just like the one he called home. If this could happen there, it also could happen in Sola Valley. My parents, Yata, and Noji are all in danger if something like this was happening. Seeing the faraway look in Bok's face, Aventil met Bok's eyes. "I didn't believe when I first heard about it a few days ago either. I'm still not sure I do. All I know is a whole village packed up and came here from Osa Creek, asking their king for protection. I don't know what they saw, but it frightened them to the core." Nothing Bok had ever seen in a lifetime of living in a farming community could cause such a calamity. He also wondered what he would do to help. Folk magic was used by serving class healers to heal, cure, and protect. It could not be used as a weapon. On the other hand, high magic, the type which only could be employed by nobles born with the acumen to use it, contained the power to create or destroy. This business sounded like high magic to Bok, not anything he could counter. And surely there were folk magic healers here in Ithenel, if that's what the princess needed. So why did she ask for me? Aventil shook his head. I do not know, but she asked for you by name. I was there when she dictated the summons. Believe me, Isabella chose you for a reason. Bok rubbed the dark beard on his chin. I don't know what I can do, but whatever you and the princess need, I am happy to help. I'm glad to hear that, and I know she will be too. Aventil's familiar smile returned, and he refilled Bok's flagon. Enough unpleasantry. We will sort this mess out tomorrow in Royal Council chambers. Let's get back to you. Tell me, is there a young lady or gentleman back in Solar Valley, sitting on their door stoop waiting for your return? Bok snorted. You sound like my mother. She's been trying to marry me off since I became a healer. Avanti's grim story of the refugees and the strange incident in Nassim still ran through his mind. But as his new friend said, there was little they could do before the morning. No, I suppose I haven't met the right person yet. Besides, any woman I bring home must meet my sister Yata's approval, and I wouldn't wish that on anyone's daughter. Aventil draped his arm over the back of his own seat, grinning like a mischievous child. This Yata, she's tough, I take it. She swings a hammer to feed her family. So, yes, I'd say she's tough. Mead spewed from Aventil's mouth at Bok's colorful description of his sister. She thrashed me plenty when we were children. Believe me, I'm more suited to healing sick crops or sick children. Yata can handle the fighting for the Omat clan. Still laughing, Aventil wiped his mouth with a linen napkin. Sounds like some of the women I've known. Except, thank the Exalted One, they didn't own a hammer, or they probably would have swung it at my head. Well, I doubt you have to worry about that with the princess. Hope I'm not overstepping my place, but Aventil doesn't mind talking about his romance with our queen-in-waiting. No, not Isabella. I can't wait for you to meet her tomorrow, Bok. Now it was Aventil's turn to wear a faraway look. She's incredible, as you'll see. Isabella is scheduled to become queen in 5 years, and she has such plans for Imarina. Bok fidgeted with his silverware, made of actual silver, not like the iron versions his sister and father crafted back at home. I'm sure she is amazing. I just hope her vaunted reputation for kindness is deserved, too. The stories do not tell the half of it, Bok. This isn't common knowledge, but Isabella has the acumen for high magic. She is being trained as a sorcerer by a private tutor, outside of the House of Magic. The princess is a sorcerer? Bok looked around the upscale tavern, realizing that despite being the poorest person in the room, he was now one of the members of a privileged club. But she certainly is of noble blood, and I've always heard talk of her intellect. I suppose she is as incredible as you say. Aventil tossed the napkin down on the table. Oh, no, do not misunderstand. Isabella does not make things easy for me. The first time she met my family, she visited our estate. Our chef worked all day preparing the finest roast you've ever tasted. We sit down and look to Isabella, who quietly informs me that she doesn't eat meat. At all? Around the Omat table, and those of his neighbors, meat was a once-per-week treat. He and Yata practically wrestled over chicken legs when they were children. At all. Now, she was so embarrassed, thinking she had ruined the meal. But my parents blamed me.
They thought I had insulted the royal family. I suppose I should have noticed she never ate meat, but I thought she just fancied fruit and bread." He tapped a nearly empty ceramic serving bowl. "Speaking of which, how are the palace's offerings?" "To be honest, nothing short of fantastic." That wasn't a polite lie. Bok had tasted flavors he never knew existed in his palate. Had he not been so nervous at first, he probably would have eaten nearly as much as Aventil. "Glad to hear it." The noble set his empty cup down and gestured to the rear of the establishment. "Excuse me for a second. I'll be right back." As soon as Aventil walked into the privy at the back of the tavern, a middle-aged woman on the serving staff tiptoed over to Bok's seat.
"How'd you do it? I mean, I'm glad you did, but how?"
she half whispered, half giggled. What do you mean? I'm here with—"
"Don't worry, you're fine. It's not like we ask you for your parents' names before we let you eat here. And besides, you're here with Lord Amarinil. But you're one of us, right?"
Bok understood. Imarina's laws didn't prohibit the serving class from fancy establishments like this tavern, but no one in his social strata had the coin to dine in a place as fine as this. I honestly don't know," he said. "I've been asked to be here, and Aventil, Lord Amarinil, is my host. I wish I could explain."
"Darling, enjoy it as much as you can for as long as it lasts."
The attendant left Bok to return to his meal and his thoughts. The rest of the meal passed with easy laughter and leisurely conversation. After Aventil took his third helping, Bok couldn't resist. He reached for a second piece of chicken, perfectly seasoned with rosemary and salt. "Need anything else, Bok? If so, I'll get someone to bring it over." "Oh, no, thank you. I don't want to be sick before my first royal council meeting." He stretched his arms back, satiated by the rich food. Aventil waved at an older gentleman in a tailored robe who was leaving the tavern. Bok assumed the man, who returned Aventil's greeting, was a noble of some sort. "Does your family live here at the palace, Aventil? You sure seem to know everything about it and everyone in it." "No, our family has a home just across the other side of the wall," Aventil replied between bites of chicken. "But I spend plenty of time here and know my way around. My parents, they aren't in Ithenel much these days." The lanky young man stared out the window into the courtyard. "They left 6 weeks ago for a voyage around the Balan Cape. In another month or so, their flagship, along with 5 other Amarinil Mercantile Company vessels, will load a shipment of sugar, rugs, spices, all the things a noble class here in Imarina will pay in gold to have. I won't see them again before summer's end." Bok rolled his eyes. "I'm surprised your parents didn't make you go with them. Even now, at my age, I half expected mine to stow themselves in my saddlebags." Aventil got quiet for the first time since the two men sat down. "Actually, Bok, my older sister and brother went, but I wasn't invited. I'm never asked to go on these trips, not since I was 14 summers." He took a sip from his mead flagon and got quiet for a moment before he continued. "I probably wouldn't want to go, knowing it would mean leaving the palace. But it would be nice if they asked." Aventil set his glass down and resumed smiling. This time, though, Bok realized his expression, at least in part, was a mask. "By the Exalted One, why am I saying this? I'm sorry to make you uncomfortable, Bok. I should be telling all this to the barkeep. She gets paid to listen to rich layabouts moan and whine. I shouldn't weigh you down with my personal entanglements." Bok pointed to his own chest. "Me, the country boy in his one almost decent set of clothes who isn't sure which fork to use? You're worried that you are making me uncomfortable?"
Believe me, Aventil, you have been far and away the highlight of the strangest day I have ever lived. Ha! I knew I liked you, Bok Omat. Aventil laughed. You aren't looking to gain anything from me, be it money or access to the crown. Oh, and you laugh at my jokes. Aventil waved over one of the serving staff. Excuse me, miss. What's for dessert tonight? I like that guy. And it's always fun to be able to start to play with accents. So, of course, our serving class has to be normal. But our royal class must be a little posh. And the British accent just always works for such a posh accent. No? Yes? That is what I believe. I hope you are enjoying it as well. All right, let's check really quick. Any questions that have come in? Comments, concerns, anything else? No. No. And not there. And how about here? No. Here? No. Alrighty. That means we get to continue reading. Oh, happy days. Oh, happy days. As we are going to start into Chapter 4. Bok spent that night in a guest room the size of his parents' home. He almost was afraid to sit on the four-poster bed, with its smooth cotton sheets and down pillows aligned in a symmetrical formation. After gingerly stretching across the brass-framed bed, he fully extended his legs, something he hadn't been able to do in his own mattress since he was 9. How can a mattress be so soft to the touch, yet so firm under my full weight? But rather than sleep, he stared at the ceiling and tried, with limited success, to sort the many thoughts competing for space in his brain. He'd had a wonderful time with Aventil, and he was convinced the young noble's friendliness was genuine. But his mind returned to the incident in Oso Creek. Maybe the wise old women and men of the Royal Council would offer an explanation and dismiss Bok to return to Sola Valley. But could it be something else? Something sinister no one had an answer for. But that was only going to grow worse. Surely Mother, Father, Yata, and little Naji are safe at home. I wish I could know for certain. This should have been the best night's sleep of his life. But Bok wrestled with his pillow, aware that sleep would come hard in the palace. The next morning Bok arrived in the Royal Council chambers early. He squirmed on the cushioned marble bench, trying without success to get comfortable. 20 rows of the ornate benches formed concentric circles in front of a dais at the far end of the room. 9 seats behind heavy oak benches stood on the dais, the middle seat being taller than the others. Portraits of Imarina's past monarchs lined the walls on either side of the seats. Bok held his arms close to his chest, as if he could hide his simple homespun clothes from the few well-dressed nobles scattered in the seats around him. Their perfumes and colognes mingled in his nose with smoke from the oil lamps ringing the council chambers. The only other serving-class people in the room were a handful of palace attendants, who tried to remain invisible as they prepared the chambers for the meeting. Bok would have felt more comfortable among them as they did their work than he would sitting among nobles. A now familiar voice behind his shoulder offered a lifeline. "You made it, Bok! In fact, you beat me here." Aventil sat down beside him in the back row and offered a quick handshake. "I know this is your first Royal Council meeting. I'll explain anything you need to know, from the pomp to the players." 7 women and men in formal robes soon filed into the chambers. Each carried hard-earned wrinkles under their eyes and various degrees of graying or balding hairlines. Bok correctly figured them to be members of the Royal Council. They took their seats on the dais, a thick purple curtain behind them. At precisely the appointed hour, 4 people wearing light gray jackets over finely tailored outfits and matching flat cloth caps strode through the front doors of the chambers. Bok recognized their uniforms as emblems of the House of Magic. At the head of the entourage was a short, stubby woman with white hair and no shortage of creases in her face. The youngest of the sorcerers, a young blond-haired man with a slight beard, not quite as tall as Aventil, and considerably more filled out, threw his hat and gloves into Bok's lap as he walked by.
"Take care of this, won't you?"
The man didn't make eye contact with Bok and kept moving. But I don't—" Bok's protest cut off as the man continued walking to the front of the room. 3 of the 4 sorcerers took seats at a grand table in front of the center of the dais, between the other emissaries' seats and the benches for the audience. The older woman, obviously the group's leader, took one of the 2 final vacant seats on the dais, leaving only the middle seat open. One of the guardians retrieved the hat and gloves. Aventil covered a laugh with his hand. "Come on, let's move up to the front." Aventil gestured toward the open row of benches directly behind the petitioner's table. "You'll want to be closer to the discussion, particularly when you are introduced." Bok's hands trembled at the thought. Other observers, most of whom carried bundles of papers or thick leather-bound books, moved to the benches, leaving the front row open. By their plain dress and apparent familiarity with the procedural protocol, Bok guessed they were various royal bureaucrats, officials at the various houses, records keepers, and other agents of the crown. Such staff members likely came from the land-owning class, the middle strata between the noble and serving class. People in the land-owning class had more legal rights than those in Bok's class, but not as many as those in the highest tier. A few well-dressed employees may have been young nobles learning their way in the royal court. Bok followed Aventil onto the empty bench at the front of the room. They took seats immediately behind where the 3 male sorcerers sat at a table. The bearded, blond young man in their group turned and glared at Bok with flinty blue eyes.
"The hired help doesn't know its place these days,"
he muttered in a voice just loud enough for Bok to hear. Aventil leaned over. "I guess you've encountered Kotarian. Consider this a welcoming gift. Everyone in Ithenel has a story about him. I certainly have a few." "Kotarian? Is he a sorcerer?" Bok furrowed his brow. "He doesn't look much older than me." "Yes, he's an acolyte. The final step before becoming a full member of the House of Magic. They're grooming him for a leadership role, which explains his presence here today. Lucky us who must deal with him." Aventil's eyes rolled to the ceiling. "They call him the House's shining light. Oh, maybe that's just the story he tells. Regardless, Kotarian certainly believes it to be true." He pointed to the white-haired sorcerer sitting on the dais. "Up there, that's emissary Loronian. As the leader of the House of Magic, she serves on the Royal Council." Bok nodded, remembering the previous night's conversation, where Aventil had described Loronian as crafty but ultimately loyal. Aventil then pointed to a square-jawed, gray-templed man at the petitioner's table. "That's Karagian." The man's tapping foot patted a quick drumbeat into the red rug covering the white marble floor. "Karagian is Lenorian's chancellor, or second in command, and the person most likely to take over her leadership of the House of Magic one day. He's even more hard-nosed than Lenorian. He protests every time the king asks the house to do anything. To listen to him, Imarina revolves around Sonorian Square." Aventil put his hand up to cover his whisper. "I'm pretty sure he also wears pads under his jacket and lifts in his boots." Bok couldn't help but smile. So, how were they allowed such insubordination? Don't they have to do what the crown commands? That was the way the world worked in Sola Valley. The serving class may not like it, but the noble class made the decisions, and the king ruled the noble class. Aventil nodded. Oh, sure. But it isn't quite so simple. Imarina's national defense is based on the power of high magic. Any invading army is going to pay a heavy price before our royal guardians even get their boots muddy, thanks to Imarinian sorcery. The House of Magic is the reason Imarina has been at peace for more than 300 years. But with that kind of power comes haughtiness. The House of Magic needs to believe every good idea is one they thought up. Thankfully, King Isbiano is an expert in that dance. Aventil pointed to the fourth gray-jacketed sorcerer who sat on the same bench as Bok and Aventil, behind Kotarian and Karagian. The balding, bespectacled man fumbled with a stack of papers, while the other two sorcerers ignored him and chatted amongst themselves. Anyway, our final sorcerer is Salandrian. He's the dean of the House of Magic, meaning he oversees the house's vast repository of information. He's usually holed up in his study at the top of the tower, doing who knows what type of research. Every so often they dust him off and bring him here before the Royal Council whenever there's a technical question on magic. The man knows his spells, but he couldn't care less about politics or power struggles. Leave him alone with his scrolls and books, and he's as content as a fly on honey. As with Loronian and Karagian, gold braids and medals decorated Salandrian's jacket, indicating his position within the House of Magic. Kotarian's jacket was adorned with neither a braid nor a medal, as he was still an acolyte. However, he wore a blue and white starburst pin on the breast of his gray tunic. That must be his House's Shining Light medal. I bet he bought it at the Great Bazaar. Aventil chuckled at his own joke. Well, Bok just nodded. I still don't know where I fit with these high-ranking officials and reality-shaping sorcerers. The only magic I know is folk magic. Nothing compared to the vast arcane knowledge assembled at that table. At least Bok knew this was no longer a prank. People in positions this weighty could only gather for something of actual importance to the kingdom. A thickly muscled royal guardian opened the door in the back of the room and held it open. The assembled crowd stood up. Bok did the same. The most important woman in Imarina, Princess Isabella Inishari, entered the royal council chambers. Bok had no way of knowing it, but she soon would become the most important person in his life, too. Ah, thank you. I appreciate that you like the posh accent. Like I said, I thought it was a good differentiator between royal class and serving class, where, one is going to have, the posh accent, while others would just speak normally, like a regular person. Why can't everybody just speak like a regular person? It's just not right. Ah, what will you do? What will you do? That's right. I will tell you what we will do. I'll tell you what we want, what we really, really want. Don't tell me what you want, what you really, really want. I wanna. If you want to be my lover, you've got to get with my friends. All right, guys, we're going to do one more chapter tonight. And then I read for somewhere between an hour and a half and 2 hours on these live reads, because beyond that, my voice starts to lose a little bit. So we got one more chapter in us, and we'll find out what happens there, and then we will pause until we return on Saturday. That's right, Saturday. We'll be back again. If you happen to just be joining us and you have missed any part of the read so far, the recorded chapters from tonight are going to be up on my YouTube channel later today. Look for them tomorrow morning. Sometimes YouTube is slow. youtube.com/@SirArminius. Betcha if you search the Blacksmith's boy, might be the only ones out there. I guess you'll find out, huh? But now, Chapter 5, Everyone in the room stood at attention as Isabella walked down the center aisle to the front of the room, neither hurrying nor pausing. Although barely 5 feet tall and petite in build, Isabella controlled the council chambers from the moment she entered. Clad in a sleek purple gown, she smiled at those assembled and offered a surreptitious wave to Aventil as she walked by. Bok's pulse leaped through his chest at the moment she passed them. She walked close enough for him to hear the click of her heels against the polished stone floor. A peasant boy from Sola Valley granted an audience with the princess? This cannot be real. She motioned for everyone to be seated when she arrived at the front of the room, then walked around the dais greeting each member of the royal council. The massive royal guardian followed her when she entered the room and always stood just feet from her, yet spoke to no one, his eyes constantly watching the room. Before taking her seat at the center of the royal council, Isabella spoke briefly with an older man who had entered the room with her and who walked behind her down the chamber's aisle. The man, who wore a red jacket in the same style as the ones worn by the House of Magic, carried a tall stack of notes and stood behind the dais. "That's Tovano, Isabella's magic tutor," Aventil whispered. Isabella's long, curly, dark brown hair spilled over her silver tiara and onto her face. Pushing it aside, she began the meeting. "Thank you for coming to this emergency session. King Isbiano asked me to lead this meeting, which well could be critical to our nation's security." Bok waited on her every precisely word spoken by the young woman in the center of the dais. "I couldn't even speak before such a crowd, but the princess is no older than I am. Yet she leads this meeting as if she's done this for 30 summers. The princess's dark eyes moved from side to side across the room. "A group of terrified citizens from the village of Oso Creek, near the city of Nassim, has brought a report that I take seriously. Here is what they said. 1 week ago, a mysterious blight struck a farm in the village, which is less than a mile from our border with the Mosork Empire. An entire acre of farmland was reduced to black ash. Far worse, 4 of our citizens, Kam and Wat Yult, and their young children, Tash and Von, were killed." "So, someone burned their property to the ground?" a royal council member asked. The princess shook her head. "No, emissary. There were no signs of fire. More like they disintegrated. And the affected area was a perfectly square tract of land, not the random destruction one would see in a blaze." Frantic whispering broke out around the room. Isabella restored silence by raising her hand. "I immediately reached out to Emissary Loronian and have been in contact with the House of Magic ever since." She looked at Loronian, who returned a satisfied nod. Smart. She made sure to acknowledge them. Loronian rose. "As you are aware, Your Majesty, I've asked Dean Saladrian to research any spells that could create such an effect. Salandrian?" The man on the bench beside Bok shuffled a handful of papers as he stood. "Let's see. My research hasn't uncovered any magics that, could cause such an effect." The man looked at one of his notes, then another. "Fire generation spells are common, of course, but as you said, there is no indication fire was used in Osa Creek, either eldritch or natural." Loronian nodded her satisfaction with this answer. "You see, Your Majesty, while this unfortunate incident may appear at first glance to be magical in origin, we believe it is the result of natural phenomena." Tovano stepped forward from his spot behind Isabella. He was balding and slightly stooped, with a thin, uneven brown and white beard. "What about primitive magics?" He scratched his patchy chin. "From the time before the house was established and magic codified,
There are stories that the old sorcerers had spells of great destructive force.
Loronian frowned.
Those are folk tales meant to frighten peasant children, Tovano, as you well know.
But didn't Queen Imarina form the House of Magic centuries ago largely to regulate such dangerous spells? Isabella tilted her head to the side as she faced the sorcerers.
Yes, no.
Salandrian dropped a stack of papers.
You are correct. That is why your ancestor formed the house. Your Majesty, that is.
Loronian froze the disheveled sorcerer with a glare.
Be that as it may, your Majesty, our archives contain no records of any such spell. I highly doubt ancient spellcasters could do what the House of Magic cannot.
Isabella rapped her knuckles against ornately carved arm of the chair.
Very well, then. If we do not know what caused this destruction, we at least should consider who.
The question set off a firestorm of arguing amongst the royal council. The emissary of security felt certain that Imarina's ancient enemies, the Mosork Empire, were responsible and pounded her fists into the table to make her point. The emissary of commerce was just as animated in noting he spent years establishing trade routes with the Mosorks, and any military action would jeopardize that diplomatic progress.
Enough!
The princess stood and raised her hand, and the bickering stopped.
Esteemed emissaries, please, let us not lose sight of our purpose.
She sat down once she had the group's attention.
We do not know who did this or why. The kingdom has been at peace for more than 300 years. We cannot declare war on the Mosork Empire over guesswork and flimsy evidence. Agreed, Your Majesty, Loronian said. The House of Magic believes any aggressive action would be premature, at least until we ascertain the culprits responsible, if there are any such culprits. What do you mean, Emissary Loronian?
The tone in her voice made the hair on Bok's neck quiver.
What I mean, Your Majesty, is that this assembly is placing great stock in the far-fetched tales of terrified, superstitious farmers. It could be that some serving-class field hand got drunk, set fire to his own land, then passed out from the smoke and was consumed by the blaze. Yes, no one saw any fire, but perhaps they simply weren't looking.
Isabella's brown eyes narrowed. Bok even saw her fist clench, ever so slightly.
Whether you believe these people or not is your prerogative, but emissary, and anyone else who doubts my resolve, I spoke with them personally. I heard the terror in their voices, the grief at losing their beloved friends and neighbors. They came to Ithenel to warn us, but also to petition their leaders for help. If this is some kind of hoax, these poor people are not party to it.
Aventil nudged Bok with his elbow. The blacksmith's boy nodded.
Yes, I see why you called her incredible. Princess Isabella is every bit as capable as she is beautiful, which is saying a lot.
Isabella stood again and looked out over the room.
This is why I will lead an expedition to Oso Creek to investigate this tragedy, and to help the people affected. A large force would arouse the Mosorks if they are not responsible, and tip them off to our concerns if they are. So, a small task force, rather than a large army, is preferable for this mission. Accompanying me will be my personal tutor, Tovano.
She gestured to the older man behind her. He smiled and waved to the audience in an informal way Bok could not imagine Loronian, Karagian, or Katorian ever doing. The latter two sorcerers shook their heads and muttered amongst themselves in obvious disapproval. Isabella raised her eyebrows to them.
Chancellor Karagian and, Katorian, I believe it is. I understand this mission requires a House of Magic's trusted counsel.
Aventil grinned. She knew that blowhard's name, and she wanted to remind them of who is in charge. Isabella continued.
I propose that our group include a representative of the House to serve as our primary consultant on all things high magic. Tivana will be there to help me continue my studies, and who knows, perhaps a second set of well-trained eyes may be of value. Emissary Loronian, do you have a nominee?
Kotarian will represent the house,
Loronian called the young sorcerer up to the dais.
He is our brightest, most accomplished acolyte.
I will do my best, emissary, your majesty.
Katorian bowed to the princess. Karagian sat back with his arms crossed.
You will have to do better than that. You are representing the house. Success is an expectation. Failure is not an option. Very well, then. Welcome, Katorian. I am sure your skills will prove useful on this expedition.
Isabella motioned to one of the royal guardians at the back of the room, the same older gentleman who had helped Bok when Katorian had assumed Bok was an attendant. The man strode purposefully to the front of the dais, where he bowed to Isabella. Isabella took him by the crook of the arm and nudged him onto the dais.
Commander Corrigan will coordinate our security. The commander has dedicated more than 30 summers as a member and now leader of the Royal Guard. We could be in no safer hands.
Like all Imarinian schoolchildren, Bok had learned the Royal Guard's creed, loyalty above all. This man seemed to be the embodiment of those principles. Isabella turned to the back of the dais.
Corrigan will be joined by my personal royal guardian, Lieutenant Wingate, whom I trust with my life.
The guardian, who had been at Isabella's side throughout the meeting, bowed to the princess, then stepped back and resumed his silent duties. Wingate was extraordinarily large, several inches taller than Aventil even. The broad-shouldered man's dark brown arms were as large around as many men's thighs, and his own legs were equally muscular.
Also accompanying us will be Lord Aventil Amarinil. For generations, his family has owned a vast shipping and trading empire. His knowledge of local customs will be valuable assets in our journey.
Aventil jumped off the bench and took his place on the dais, giving the crowd a quick wave before doing so.
The final newcomer of our party is a newcomer to the palace, but I believe he will prove to be a vital ally in our cause. Bok, could you stand, please?
Isabella pointed to the startled peasant. Bok folded his arms at his waist and stood. He hoped his legs didn't visibly shake, although they twitched under his pants leg. Should I smile or wave? Say something? Instead, he stood mute as a tree stump. Heat rushed to his cheeks.
I give you Bok Omat, healer of Solar Valley, an agricultural community south of Ithenel. I personally chose him to join our team.
Did I imagine it, or did Isabella emphasize a word personally? If Bok's mind played tricks, the rest of the audience must have imagined the same thing. He expected snickers at his simple clothes and awkward demeanor, but no one muttered a syllable.
Bok is thoroughly versed in folk magic, and given the nature of this attack, we could need that perspective. Thank you for coming, and for joining us on this important mission. You may be seated.
Bok nodded in acceptance of the invitation. He feared that if he stood much longer, his nervous legs would collapse underneath him, as if he was a newborn calf. He also realized he would not be back home in Solar Valley in a matter of days. Instead, he would be part of an official royal mission to the nation's northern border, where he would investigate an unknown yet highly dangerous situation of concern to Imarina's most powerful leaders. Quite suddenly, Bok's life had become a great deal more complicated. But before he could even begin to sort through the repercussions of Isabella's announcements, Karagian pointed to him.
Folk magic? Is this necessary, your majesty? No offense to this person, but do we need a country healer in a royal delegation?
I say we do. Any additional questions, Chancellor? Isabella's curt response left no room for debate or misunderstanding. Karagian let the matter drop, something Bok doubted he did very often. The princess spoke for a few more minutes, mostly about the logistics of the upcoming journey, but Bok heard little of it. He still couldn't believe that he, of all people, had been picked for such an important mission. I wish I could tell my family, but I'll be on the road to Oso Creek by the time I could send word home. The meeting soon adjourned, and everyone stood as Isabella, followed by Wingate and Tovano, exited through a side door. The House of Magic contingent then got up and left as a group, walking past Bok and Aventil on their way out. Katarian lingered behind his superiors to speak with his new travel companions.
Well, Lord Amarinil, I'm delighted that you will be joining us,
Katarian snickered.
Tell me now, how does being the princess's concubine qualify you for a paranormal inquiry?
The young sorcerer then stuck a thumb in Bok's direction.
At least a peasant might be good for something. Preparing meals, laundering clothes, evacuating latrines. But you, a dilettante who spends his family's money, the lone function you serve is... Well, I suppose only the princess can attest to that. Or perhaps she finds you lacking in that regard as well.
Aventil jumped to his feet, leaned in close to Katarian's smirking face. You'll watch your tongue, jackal, or you might find yourself picking it up off the floor. He practically spat the words at the young sorcerer, who waggled his fingers in mock fear. Bok grabbed his new friend and struggled to pull him back. Aventil's thin arms felt like hammered iron under his loose-fitting crimson and gold shirt. Come on, Aventil. Pay him no mind. He's trying to get you angry in front of the royal council. And the princess, Bok said. Let it pass. Aventil stepped back. Correct, my friend. This gray-coated worm wouldn't have the heart for a real fight. But someday he might find himself in one. Katarian laughed as he strutted away. Bok watched the arrogant sorcerer for a moment, then turned back to Aventil. The redness in his friend's pale face dissipated as quickly as it surfaced, and the two men sat again in the now empty gallery. I am sorry that happened, Aventil. I wish I could have done something more. No, my friend, you were right. Katarian and I have never gotten along. He wanted to goad me into doing something impulsive to prove to Isabella that I am too immature to be trusted on this mission. Maybe he's right. Aventil looked over Bok's shoulder and smiled. Enough unpleasantness. There's someone here who wants to meet you. Isabella! I've got Bok here. She turned. For a second, her eyes locked with Bok's. He forced himself to look down, lest his heart stop beating. All right, everyone, we have reached the end of our reading for this evening. I hope you enjoyed, as we read along in The Blacksmith's Boy, where we met a whole cast of characters. Some good people, some royal jackasses. Could a court be any different? Reminder, if you have missed any of the reading tonight, it will all be available on the YouTube channel, youtube.com/@SirArminius. A little bit later this evening, but look for it tomorrow morning. If you enjoyed the reading, didn't enjoy the reading, but enjoyed the story, make sure you share it with your friends. Like, comment, subscribe to the channel, free to subscribe. Doesn't cost you a thing. Do all of those things to help me to make sure that the right people and enough people are getting a look at this book, and helps out the author much better that way. Thank you all for coming along to join me this evening. The greatest gift that you can give me is the gift of your time, and I appreciate that you guys gave me the gift of yours this evening, whether it was for 5 minutes or for 2 hours. No matter which way we look at it, thank you for being here with me. I will be back again on Saturday, where we will pick up at Chapter 6 and continue our reading of The Blacksmith's Boy by Bruce Buchanan. A reminder, if you just cannot wait to hear more, I don't blame you. It's been a good story so far. You can't wait. You need to hear more, and you need to read it right now. Stop out to the author's websites. You can check it out on Amazon. You can check it out on his website. You can also check it out at his publisher's website. And in fact, let me get some of those really quick for us, because I should do that. So you can look on Amazon. You can look on, wrong square there. You can look from the publisher, wildinkpublishing.com/Bruce Buchanan. Just go to their website, wild-ink-publishing.com. I'm sure you'll find it. Or you can look it up on his website, brucebuchananauthor.com. I hope to see you guys all again on Saturday. Have yourselves a wonderful rest of your evening and a fantastic week ahead. Good night, everybody.